Hi, baby boomer fans. We are Jackie and Janine, the Pfeiffer sisters, and love to talk about the 1950s, inviting you to reminisce with us as we explore experiences of that decade. Grab your favorite malt or Green River. Make sure you are wide awake and get ready to be inspired about the 1950s. Welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat. Hello, viewers. Hello, Jackie. Good to see you.
Hello, Janine.
Yes. And isn't it interesting? This is number 111, the chat that we are having with our wonderful guests who share experiences from the 1950s. Another neat experience that you will incur tonight, this evening, today, whenever you visit our website at whilethewindmillwatch.com. You can, where all of the fun chats are recorded and archived, but also through our YouTube channel, the 1950s Fun Chat. So, Jackie, take us into our program today.
Okay, you did mention one thing, and that is the banner that's running across the bottom, www.whilethewindmillwatch.com. That is the source of so much information about the book, about the authors, about the vendors, about the events where we might be participating in, and then the 1950s Fun Chat, as she said. So you'll find all of them, 111 soon, on that site. Okay, also take a look in the upper right-hand corner. You'll see the beautiful North Dakota sunset, which wraps around the book. And the little white dot on the bottom there is a very, very special little note in that this book was published in 2021. In 2022, it won the National Independent Press Award in regional nonfiction category as the distinguished favorite. So that little book is really proud to wear that little white little symbol. So let's get on with it. We are going to introduce you to a man who is known as Mr. Radio Broadcaster or something like that in North Dakota. His name is Al Gustin, and he was born in 1947, the fifth of 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls. His fraternal and maternal grandparents homesteaded in Morton County, North Dakota, about 6 miles apart. So other than going to college, he'd never really left the farm. He graduated from Mandan High School, after which he graduated from North Dakota State University in 1969 with a degree in agricultural economics, and he began his broadcasting career while in college at KXJB-TV in Fargo. After graduation from college, he moved to broadcasting for KFYR AM and KBMR of Bismarck. He would soon become the farm director for both stations. So prior to his 2012 retirement from broadcasting, Al was named Farm Broadcaster of the Year by the National Association of Farm Broadcasting. Among other noteworthy broadcasting achievements are his twice awarded Oscars in agriculture for having the best television farm programming nationwide, and his induction into the Midwest chapter of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, the Silver Circle. So although he's retired, Al's legacy in North Dakota remains. He is the author of Farm Byland, Reflections on North Dakota Agriculture from 1974 to 2013, and he still does some freelance writing and TV reporting. Al and his wife, Peggy, have 3 daughters and 3 sons-in-law and 5 wonderful grandchildren. Al, welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat.
Thank you very much. Good to see you, ladies.
You're very welcome. We're going to start out by talking about the 50s, of course. So tell us how being raised on a farm ranch during the decade of the 1950s helped shape the man you have become and are still becoming.
Well, when I think back to the 50s, I was born in 47. And so in the 50s, I was, grade school, basically. And we did a lot of chores. We milked cows by hand. We had pigs and chickens and beef cattle. And there was just a lot of chores that we did as a family, mom and dad and us kids all together. But it really shapes your sort of, we hear a lot about work ethic. And it occurs to me that much of that work ethic that people talk about when they talk about North Dakota people.
Mhm.
A lot of it is, I think it's a lot of it is because of livestock. I mean, you grew up on a farm where there was livestock,
Mhm.
and there's always chores. There's chores, and there's responsibility, and there's nurturing, and all those things I think help shape who you are in sort of what gives you pleasure later in life, as far as accomplishing things, and at the end of the day thinking like, it was a good day because I did something,
Mhm.
those
Yes.
chores really help shape you.
Well, and there's a goal with
Mhm.
chores. If it's not just to take care of the livestock and make sure they're comfortable, but there might be a goal of farm income from them.
Sure.
More than likely there is, or beyond that even. And I think that it's very interesting the fact that it's in my life and probably in Jackie's too. That's how we became goal oriented and still
Mhm.
are.
Sure.
Mhm.
In our
Mhm.
family, we call it chasing the carrot, and we're still doing it.
Yeah. Well, and I think about that too, and the extent to which, when I was growing up, the extent to which livestock were such an important part of the farm that we were on. And to a certain extent, even it was almost a self-sufficiency. You had cattle, and you had cow, beef, dairy cattle, and you had hogs, and you had chickens. You had all those things to provide food for your family, and then you raised crops to feed the livestock. So that was largely what your farm was centered on. It was centered on livestock production, and I was going over my dad's income and expense records from the 1950s. And there was one year there where the income from selling cream was greater than the income from selling wheat.
Mm.
Oh, wow.
Poor
Wheat,
year for wheat.
cash crops were just sort of secondary. It was sort of what you had left over after you raised your feed for your livestock, your wheat, your oats, and your barley, and your corn. And then if you had some extra land, you'd plant that to a cash crop. But that was secondary.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Did you find in your farm that perhaps the chickens became the pocket money for groceries, or was that the
Of
cream
course.
check?
Of course, it was largely the egg money is what bought the groceries, and
Mhm.
to probably some of our clothing and so forth. And the
Mhm.
cream check was more of a source of income, just sort of for the whole farm. But the household expenses largely were paid by the eggs. We sold,
Mhm.
I don't know, we'd have a couple of crates of eggs every week that we would take to the co-op store in Mandan, and sell the eggs. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mhm.
Did your mother always work on the farm, or did she work off the farm eventually?
No, no, she always worked on the farm. There was way more than enough for her to do.
Mhm.
She
Mhm.
didn't do a lot in the fields, but she was busy in the house, just the cooking and the cleaning and the sewing, and
Mhm.
those ladies worked so hard. They worked
They
so hard.
Yes.
The men worked from sun to sun, but the woman's work was never done, and that's true. They just
It's
it was
still true, Al. It's
Yeah.
still true.
well, yeah, it probably is. I don't know. I can't speak for your household.
No, no. But the farm wife's lifestyle style was special. And can you think of one or two things that might have made it special? The
Well,
farm wife.
I think for my mom, and I really don't know. We didn't talk about those things. Uh, she really liked gardening,
Mm.
and I think one of the things that made farm life special for her was that she was working with and alongside her husband and her children.
Mhm.
And even though, like I said, a lot of what she did was in the house, but not all of it. And I think for her, I think that was, I came across something. It was in a book that I read, and they were talking with German Russian women, and their who they and their husbands were sort of pioneers, homesteaders, and
Mhm.
so forth. And
Mhm.
and they said they just loved the lifestyle. They loved it, and it was so hard, but they just
Mhm.
loved it. And
Right.
I just found that it's sort in a way surprising, because they worked so hard as they did. But it was what they wanted. They wanted to be out there with their family, on the land.
Mhm.
That's what they wanted.
Yeah. And it was gratifying to be a part of a team, which a farm family is. At least that's what we experienced. And sounds as if it was the same thing for you. You were a team, and there was gratification and pride in that.
There is. And you know, there's still some of that. And here again, I think it's probably more prevalent when you start thinking about ranching than it is about crop farming. When I think of some of these ranch families, they really are partners, the husband and the wife. They're partners, and they do things together. And this is their venture as a team. And it's probably not quite so prevalent in crop farming, but it's still there. You know, there's still the idea that we're doing this together. It's not your farm, it's our farm. It's not your ranch, it's our ranch. You know, and this is what we're doing together. This is our dream. You know, I think there's still a lot of that.
Yes. So I want to move on to something else, and that is your lifelong career. How did you happen to begin in broadcasting while you were still a student in college?
Well, I was a junior at North Dakota State University. And when I got out of high school, I really didn't want to go back to the farm. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I didn't want to go back to the farm. I knew that. And so some of my friends from high school were going to North Dakota State, so I went to North Dakota State. I majored in arts and sciences because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And there was a time there, I think in my sophomore year, and this is going to sound a little strange, but I was living in Reed Hall, which is on the north end of the campus. And my classes, because I was in arts and sciences, were mostly down in Menard Hall, which is on the south end of the campus. And you walk back and forth and you walk past Shepherd Arena. And for those of you who've gone to North Dakota State University, you know that Shepherd Arena is where they have the animal science classes and there are livestock there and so forth. And I think it was the smell. I really do.
Wow.
That made me homesick for the cattle and so I thought, you know, maybe I should be in agriculture. So I switched my majors into ag economics because that's what you major in when you want to be in agriculture, but you don't know what you want to do. And so I was in ag econ. Yeah. And sometime during my junior year, there was a notice on one of the bulletin boards in Morrill Hall that said KXJB-TV was looking for, they called it a work study individual, someone who would work 20 hours a week and help out in their farm department. Well, I'm working my way through college, doing all sorts of odd jobs, trying to make enough money to get through college. And so I mentioned it to Peggy, who at that time was my girlfriend. And she said, you know, a couple of weeks later, she said, did you ever fill that out, send it in? I said, nah. She said, why don't you? And so I did. And I got the job, and I spent the last part of my junior year, all of my senior year, working at Channel 4 with their farm director, Daryl Eastwold, who was way different than me. He was your basic type A personality. Go, 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 go. He was involved in everything. And I'm just this laid back farm kid. I wasn't at all like that. And so I often say that I learned how not to do a lot of things from working with Daryl, but I really learned to appreciate the business. I enjoyed the business. I enjoyed being involved with farmers and with agribusiness people, and so then when I graduated, Channel 4 at that time was owned by John Bowler, who also owned Channel 12 in Bismarck. He owned the KX network, and so when I graduated, there was a job waiting for me at Channel 12 if I wanted it, because they didn't have a farm department. And so I moved back to Bismarck and started there, worked there for a little over a year, and then it got sold, and the new owner didn't want to do farm programming. And so that's when I went to KFYR. I basically just knocked on the door and says, hey, you need somebody? And they knew who I was by that time. And they said, well, we'll make a spot for you.
Nice.
And so that's what they did. And so my dad was still alive then, and he was farming. My younger brother Dennis, who was still in college, and so I, you know, my shift has always been early morning, and so I'd be done by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'd go help Dad. And so when Dad passed away and my brother took over, then I just helped him. I helped Dennis, and I've been doing that ever since. And so Dad passed away in 65. And so, excuse me, in 76. And so I've been helping Dennis. And so I've been a partner in the operation, a minority interest partner, but I've got some cattle and I've got some land, and it's is what I do. And so, like I say, I've really never really left the farm.
It's the best of both worlds for you.
I guess
It is, and they complemented each other well, I think. And I think people would tell me that when I'd meet somebody who I'd never met, and they'd say, you farm, don't you? And I say, yeah. I said, well, we can tell.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would think that would have given you a deeper connection with those people you were interviewing, because you were they know that you were experiencing some of the same things that they were.
Right. That's right. And so because you could empathize with them, and when they were having difficulties, whether it be with drought or whatever it was, you understood, and you understood how important it was to them, and so then your reporting reflected that.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Al, when was it that women were first starting to get into farm broadcasting?
There was actually a lady who started at KFGO in Fargo in the late 60s. Bev Walters. She was from Oaks, and she did some farm programming on KFGO. Okay. She was the first woman farm broadcaster in the country, I think. Uh-huh. And it is interesting now because the majority of the young members of the National Association of Farm Broadcasting are women, the vast majority. And that's a whole other subject that I would someday. I'm going to write a column about this, but county agents, BOAG instructors, mostly women, women. And I'm old enough to remember when there weren't any. I remember the first county agent in North Dakota that was a woman, and it was just kind of like different. and now it's almost different. It's almost surprising when there's a young man that's a county agent. Isn't that interesting? That's really interesting.
Is, yes.
It is. And I don't know why that all happened.
But that's a good thing, isn't it?
Well, it's fine. I have no problem with it. Sure, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. I'm the father of 3 daughters, and I'm glad that they have job opportunities that they have, and career paths that they can follow, and upward possibilities. And yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful that they have those options.
Do you find that most of those women farm broadcasters grew up on a farm, or are there some who are just in it without that farm background?
I think the vast majority of them grew up on a farm. I guess I can't say that for a fact. I don't know that for a fact, but I think most of them did. They grew up at least in a rural community, small towns, and probably listening to some farm broadcaster on some small town radio station, and said, that's something I'd like to do. And they're very good at what they do. Very good. Good.
Well, Al, can you recall a special interview that just still resonates with you?
Well, it would be easy for me to say, my job has given me the opportunity to go places that I never expected. I was in China, went to Egypt, interviewed, President Sadat from Egypt. I mean, those are things that you just never forget, obviously, and the chance to be there. I remember when we went to the mission to the Mideast. It was part of a trade mission with the governor and agribusiness people, and we were there as reporters. And we got into Cairo, and at night from the airport, and they took us to our hotel. And in the morning, I opened the drapes on the hotel window, and there's the pyramids. It was like, yeah, the pyramids.
They're real.
I'm this young kid from North Dakota. I've never been any place. And here I am looking at the pyramids. And it was the same way on the Great Wall of China. And so no, those sorts of things. But when we talk about individual interviews,
Mhm.
the ones that stick with me are the ones where someone is, I shouldn't say, I don't know, hurting, but that's part of it. I recall interviewing a farmer that was losing his farm. Those sorts of those things are, they're so hard. They're so hard. And you as a reporter think, here I am, I'm invading his privacy. This is good. This is good television, but it's awkward. It's hard. I remember interviewing a farmer who was up by Underwood, and he had sold his farm to the Falkirk Mining Company, and he was moving his cows to Minnesota because he had sold his farm, his ranch. And I interviewed him it was a Saturday morning, and they were loading the cows onto the semi truck, and he had tears in his eyes. I thought, he still had his cows. He'd been paid for his land, but I often talk about how we are people of the land, and that's what this man was, because the land was never going to be the same, and that's why he had tears in his eyes. It was because of what was going to happen to this land that had been entrusted to him.
Yes, that is a wonderful way to think about that. It's entrusted to you for a certain amount of time.
That's right.
And
that's right. I say you really can't own part of Mother Earth. Not from the standpoint, not own it like you own a car. This is Mother Earth, and it's entrusted to us. We are tenants.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, very much. Yes, we've had a personal experience in our family like that, where we've left the farm, and it is very, very hard. I don't know that you ever get over it, because that's who you are.
Right. It is. It's so much, and I think of all the millions of people in this country who don't understand what that means. They have no idea to have a connection to the land. I mean, they're generations away from it. It's been nothing but big city for generations, nothing but concrete, and so they don't know what that means. But it was interesting because I got an email from a fellow that I used to work with. He was raised in Minnesota and left the farm as a young man, never went back. But he's older than I am, and he says, "But I go back there and I just walk around." Because he too is a product of the land, and that's what makes us special. I think it really does make us special.
Very much so. Very much so.
Do you have something? Okay, I have another topic that is a tangent kind of thing. What led you to moving an 1883 house to your farm near Mandan in 1992? And would you describe the restoration of that house?
Well, okay. Well, we when I got back to Bismarck after college, we lived in town. We were just having forming our family. And so we went through all the school years in town, and it worked best for them to go to school and we'd be in town. When our girls finally graduated from high school, we decided we wanted to go back to the farm. And of course, we had been here, I had been here working all those years. And the girls grew up out here, even though they lived in town, they grew up out here on the farm. And they had all the benefits of that. And so, but we always wanted to come back to the farm. We didn't want a new house. We wanted an old house. And I don't know why that is, but Peggy and I both agreed that we wanted an old house. And so we took out an ad in the North Dakota Rural Electric magazine and said, looking for an old house that can be moved. It was amazing. The calls we got, it was, we went and we looked at one and it was your basic abandoned farmhouse. There wasn't a speck of paint on it. The windows had been gone for years.
Oh, gosh.
It was ready to fall down. But anyway, we found this house in New Salem.
Oh yeah, not too far away.
Not too far away. And the house was built in 1883 by the man who came to North Dakota to start a religious colony, came from Wisconsin. And there was a group called the German Evangelical Colonization Society. And they would send people out to the wilderness to start religious colonies. And he came to Mandan in the fall of 1882. And he literally walked, the railroad extended west of Mandan at that point, not very far. He walked along the tracks until he found a spot where he wanted to start this religious colony. And so then he spent that winter in Mandan, and in the spring of 1883, he had lumber shipped out, and he built this house at where New Salem was going to be. So this house was there before there was actually the town. And because he was so prominent, he became a land agent. And so the house was a polling place at one time. It was the land office originally. And then in the 1930s and 40s, a lady that lived here, Mrs. Wolf, was a midwife. And so we have a listing of all the people who had babies. It's on the wall.
Interesting.
It's right there. All the people who had babies in this house. And so the house was a landmark in New Salem, and to a certain extent, there was a reluctance on the part of some people to see it go. But the fact is that it was falling into disrepair. There was still an old retired gentleman who was living here, so it was being kept up to a certain extent. But we just thought that it had a lot of character and certainly a lot of history, and that so we hired a moving company, and we moved it in Thanksgiving week of 1992. Spent that whole winter gutting it, putting in all new wiring, all new plumbing, all new drywall, and then moved in on in Memorial Day of 1982. And so so we've been in it 30 years now.
What a wonderful story.
Yes, it's interesting when that slogan, the stories this could tell. Well, you can tell them.
Yeah, we can in a way, and we sort of kept it. We kept it as original as we could, and so it's a bit like living in a museum. But we just love it, And
Is it can it be on the National Register?
That's on the wall behind me too.
All right.
Where they actually did the investigative work, and it qualified for the National Registry, but it was never put on the registry. And so we did not have the restrictions that you would have had as far as any alterations that you wanted to make, although we didn't make very many. And so, but you have to modernize, to a certain extent, because these old houses were not, upstairs there were 3 little bedrooms, and these Victorian houses, the parlor and the dining room were very sort of ornate, grand. The kitchen was very functional, and the bedrooms were Spartan. There was 3 bedrooms upstairs. They had a light bulb with a pull chain on it. That was it. Of course.
Were there any closets?
Oh, very small, very small. But see, the wiring had all been done long after the house had been built. So they ran wires through the baseboards and wherever they could, and so on. And so forth. And so the same way with the plumbing. The plumbing had been pulled in long after the house had been built. And so, they had to make allowances for that. But yeah, so it's wonderful living here. And to a certain extent, I often think, now this house deserves to be preserved. Somebody needs to preserve it. And for today, it's us.
It's kind
Does
of
it
like
have a wraparound porch?
It had, and it originally had an open porch. It originally actually had 2 porches. One of them got enclosed when they put plumbing in the house, and they made it into a bathroom. And the other one, the front porch, was enclosed, like most of them were through the years, and was screened in, a screen porch. We always wanted an open porch, and so we opened it back up again. We actually found pillars, columns, porch columns, and there again by taking an ad out and looking for some, and we actually found some. And so we opened the porch back up again and to make it look more like it did originally. So,
Do you have a
What an
porch?
exciting project.
Yeah. Well, you have a porch?
yeah, it was a labor of love, and it was a tremendous amount of work,
Mhm.
and of course now after 30 years, now you're to the point where you're starting to you got to do things over again. You refinish the floors and you do
Yeah.
a lot of painting and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's great living here.
Do you relax out on it in the evenings or in the early
I
mornings?
do. We sit on the porch sometimes. We don't usually have enough time to do much of that, but I do. We do that. Yes, we spend a lot of time. We have a rather extensive garden yard, a lot of flower beds. We spend a lot of time out there doing those things, mowing the grass and taking care of the trees. And we planted lots of trees over the years. And so I just love my trees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Al, before we came on the air, we talked about an experience that you had in Spokane, and it was related to your farm broadcasting career. Can you enlighten us on that?
Well, the National Association of Farm Broadcasting, in addition to having an annual meeting every year in the fall, they had a summer meeting, and that would move around the country. And sometime in the early 70s, I think it might have been 73, 74, the summer meeting was in Spokane, and the World's Fair was in Spokane at that time. And so I had a chance there to go out to Spokane, and we did some touring. I remember going out to seeing some of the wheat fields out there in Eastern Washington, and it was it's a different agriculture than what we had here, than what I grew up with. So it was fascinating, and of course, just being at the World's Fair was fascinating. All the exhibits and all the excitement of that, and so that's one of the, like I say, that's one of the things that the job allowed me to do, was to go places where I otherwise wouldn't have gone. When I spent all those years at KFYR TV. They had an arrangement with holiday travel or holiday vacations, one of those deals where you get on the air and you say, "Hi, I'm Al Gustin. Come join me on a trip to whatever," And they're still doing that. But we had a chance. I mean, we went to Europe, we went to Alaska twice, we went to Hawaii a couple times, all because of those that relationship between the television station and the audience, and made lifelong friends. It was wonderful.
Did you ever get an opportunity to mentor young people in farm broadcasting?
Not directly. There is such a program where they do mentoring now. They weren't doing that so much when I was before I retired. So not directly. I think indirectly you sort of do by example. I know I've talked to young people who say that. And so yeah, the business has changed so much, like every other business. The broadcast business has changed so much, and so it's just a different world out there. These young people are different than they used to be. The business is different than it used to be. Everything's tied to social media and all that sort of stuff, and I don't fit there anymore. I know that. So not very well anyway. But I'm still doing some television, and it's interesting because what happened is that there's a photographer, Dwayne Walker, who grew up in Selfridge, who started in broadcasting as a photographer the same time I did. We're the same age, and we worked side by side for decades, all those years. We both started at Channel 12 at the same time. Then I went to KFYR TV, and he went to KFYR TV. We worked side by side. We spent thousands of hours in a car going out and doing TV stories. And when I retired, he said, "Al, if there's ever a story you want to do, let me know, because I got a place that'll pay us for them."
Oh.
And I said, "I'm done. I'm just done." And it wasn't 2 weeks later, something came across. I thought, that's a great story. Somebody needs to tell that story.
Yeah.
I called Dwayne. I said, "Is the offer still good?" He says, "Yeah, you bet." And so we've been doing that for the last dozen years now since I retired, and we've done, I don't know, 100 different stories. But
How fun.
but now it's fun because you see, and I tell people this, and they sometimes they don't quite fully understand it. But when you're in the broadcast business, every day you have to come up with a good story as a reporter. That's your job. You got to come up with a good story every day, and there's a stress associated with that. But when you can pick a story and say, I'm going to do this story because I want to, not because I have to do one today, but you can do it on your own time, pick the stories you want to do, then it's fun. You know,
did you ever have anyone who refused an interview with you?
Oh, sure. And it, not a lot, but there are times when, and there again, sometimes it's for the reason that you wouldn't expect. I remember driving back from Minot one time. It was in the spring. This was when after I'd quit TV. I was just doing radio at the time, and I had my recorder with me, and there was a farmer in the field, and going to the first farmers in the field. There's a story. Spring's work, field work starts. So I stopped, and he knew me, of course, after all those years, and I knew the name. And so we did an interview. We talked about how things were, the soil moisture and the crop outlook, and what he was doing this year compared to last year, and all those typical sorts of things that you ask. And so that fall, I called him one day and I said, "Say, remember I was up there last spring? Yeah. He says, how'd the crop turn out?" I said, "Oh, it's really, really good, really good." I says, "Can we do a story about that?" And he says, "No, I better not, because of the neighbors." That's that. Sometimes you get turned on, like you say, for the reasons that you would not expect. It's not because somebody's done something wrong and doesn't want the world to know about it. Sometimes it's because they did something that was really, really good and very successful, and they're just better off if they don't say anything.
Right. So that man was showing respect.
He was.
He was not thinking of himself. He was thinking of others and how his story might affect others. That's right. That was honorable.
Yeah. And so, there have been other cases where you call up and there are, all those interviews that over the years that you do with newsmakers, you call up. I had this list that was hanging in front of my desk of maybe 100 contacts, people that were in commodity groups, farm organizations, USDA, and I would call these people routinely once a month. It's called, "What's going on? Anything going on?" And invariably there'd be something. You call this guy from the wheat producers or whatever. "Anything going on?" "No, well, we just got back from Washington. We were out there lobbying." Well, can we talk about that? So that's how you'd come up with a lot of stories. That's what I did. But there were times when you'd call up and they'd say, "Well, we got this going on," and I said, "Can we do a story about that?" Better not. Sensitive or timely, and they say, "Well, maybe in a month." So you make a mental note or a physical note, and you call them back in a month, and you say, "Can we do that story now?" And sometimes it works that way, but you develop this relationship. And of course, part of it is just because you've been there for so long, you develop this level of trust. And that to me was just critical, because they knew that I wasn't out to make them look bad. They trusted me and I trusted them. And if they said, "I'll tell you this, but you can't include it," I never betrayed that trust. And I made the comment one time. I said, of all the people that I've interviewed, I don't know that there's one that I wouldn't go back and ask for another interview, because there was that level of trust there. And even when it was an uncomfortable subject, something that they didn't want to talk about, they knew that it was what I was doing it because it was my job, and that I was going to do it all. I was going to do it right, And so, and I don't say that to pump myself up, but I mean, that's just the way. That's what you have to do if you're going to survive. And And like I say, if you've got news contacts and you want to be able to go back to them next year, you have to treat them right. You have to treat them right.
I think it was more than you have to do that to survive. I think you did it so that you could live with yourself.
That's part of it. Absolutely, it's part of it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, these gotcha interviews. I could never do that. I could never.
No. So do we want to? Do we have time for one more topic, Janine, or do we have to say goodbye?
Well, let's. How about a little briefly?
Oh, a little briefly. Okay,
Yeah.
A little briefly. How did you happen to choose the registered cattle that you chose to raise? And you tell us how they're pronounced, please.
It's a German breed. It's called Gelbvieh, and the Gelbvieh breed of cattle was introduced in this country in the 70s, but at the same time as the rest of the continental breeds, the Simmental and the Limousin and the Pinzgauers and all those. It all kind of came at the same time. My brother-in-law, we were experimenting with artificial insemination, trying different breeds. My brother-in-law tried Gelbvieh cattle. They did really, really well. So we tried it, artificially bred some of our cows to Gelbvieh calves, the Gelbvieh bulls. And we were just very impressed with the outcome. And so we stayed breeding Gelbvieh cattle. Eventually you breed your half-blood heifers back to a Gelbvieh bull. Now you got 3/4 bloods, and now you can register them. So now you're in the registered business. And so we've been in the registered Gelbvieh business for 40 years. We have a production sale every year in February. The operation, the purebred operation, is being transitioned from my brother and me, primarily my brother, to his daughter and her husband in Medina. So that's undergone. So it's a multi-location, multi-generation, multi-family operation right now.
Oh, goodness.
And it's wonderful to have all of that, all those people be part of this operation. It's just
Right.
great.
Yeah, the family. Okay.
Al,
Thank you.
Al, it's been wonderful learning about your
Thank you.
story.
Yeah.
Learning about your story and how in the 1950s it was impactful in your life later on.
It was.
Your whole life, and it's wonderful that you've shared that with us. Thank you very much.
We
Ladies
My
thank
pleasure.
you.
I enjoyed it.
Good.
Thank you. We did too.
Yes.
So
yes.
for next time, folks, before next time, make sure you hit that red subscribe button and the blue thumbs up button, and we'll see you next time. And by the way, tell your friends and even your relatives about the 1950s fun chat. Toodaloo.